Hello everyone. Now what we're going to do in this particular video is to talk about how to read newspapers, how to make notes out of newspapers, and I'm doing this video because a lot of our students have been asking about how effectively can you deal with current affairs, newspaper readings, and how to go about it. And needless to say, there have been a lot of myths and misconceptions about newspaper reading, and what we're going to do in this video is to look at some of the common problems that students encounter and what can be the practical method of dealing with those issues. That's what we're going to do in the first part of the video. In the second part of the video, I'm going to take today's newspaper and actually run you through about how to select information, which information to read and which information to ignore while reading The Hindu. And we're going to primarily focus upon The Hindu as your primary newspaper source. And what I often call as newspaper dilemma is something that students, anybody who is beginning to prepare, often encounters on a very daily basis. You know, one of the first question that comes to every student's mind is, can you avoid reading the newspaper at all? You know, can you just completely avoid reading the newspaper, and can you substitute that with a monthly magazine, right? That's the common thing. Should I read the newspaper or should I just read a monthly magazine and that will do? Okay, that's one question. The second most common question that students keep asking us all the time is that when should you start reading the newspaper? How much time should you devote to reading the newspaper? Should you make notes out of newspapers, right? And if you should make notes, should you make notes date-wise or subject-wise? How should you make notes out of newspapers? And a lot of students also ask this question that in addition to newspapers, do you need to read a monthly current affairs magazine also? Okay, and also one of the last questions that students often keep asking is, do you need to read additional magazines also, such as EPW, Yojana, Kurukshetra, Frontline, etc. So we're going to look at some of these important questions, and let me answer the first question straight away, and that is that can one avoid reading newspaper? Does being a smart student preparing for UPSC, keeping the strategy in mind and the demand of the exam, can you avoid reading the newspaper? Well, and substitute that with reading a monthly magazine. Many are like, let me just read a monthly magazine, and can that be an effective strategy to replace the newspaper with a monthly magazine? And as I often say, just don't do that. You know, don't even think about that. And if anybody is telling you, you know, to do this, to replace the newspaper with a monthly magazine, they are terribly wrong. And if any individual, any organization is telling you that, you know, you can crack this examination without reading the newspaper, they're fooling you big time. Okay, so that's it. And don't be a fool and don't get fooled. Okay, so that's the practical tip. You know, one thing for you to actually keep in mind. Now, why do I say so? Why do I strongly say so? Because many people think that newspaper reading is only about collecting facts, and facts can be read from a monthly magazine also. Well, they're wrong. Facts is only one part of the preparation. There is also the need to improve your vocabulary. There is also the need to learn sentence formulation, and more importantly, there is also the need to formulate arguments. Okay, and please understand, the mains examination is all about presenting arguments and counter arguments, and for that you need more analytical understanding rather than merely just facts. So a monthly current affairs magazine will mostly end up giving you facts, and that is not going to be enough. In fact, these facts are going to be useful only to the extent of the prelims examination. But when it comes to the mains examination, when it comes to essay writing, when it comes to interview, if you are a really serious candidate, you will understand, take this advice from us, and that is that don't replace the newspaper with a current affairs magazine. Just don't do that. Okay, now moving on, the next thing that you need to keep in mind is that there are a lot of myths you know, floating around on the internet about how to go about reading the newspaper aspect. And my one of the suggestions to you is that you should identify certain common myths. Common myth number one is that you should start reading newspaper from the very first day of your preparation. And the common myth, which also another common myth, or common myth number two, is that newspaper reading is a separate task which has to be performed separately. Okay, now why I'm saying is, what I'm trying to say is that it's a myth that you should start reading newspaper from the first day of your preparation. You decide to start preparing UPSC on 1st of September, and then you're like, okay, let me pick up and read the newspaper on the 1st of September. You will hear parents, you will hear friends, you will hear relatives, you hear well-wishers saying, oh, if you really want to prepare for UPSC, start reading the newspaper. You open the newspaper and it is all Greek and Latin, because nobody is discussing a Riya Chakravarti or Sushant Singh Rajput there, at least in the Hindu, right? And one of the things is that they're discussing, okay, what is the GST compensation issue? And you don't know what is GST. Right? So one of the things is, as a beginner, don't get into the trap of believing that you open the newspaper on the very first day, you're going to understand, you're going to make sense of it. You're not going to. And many students then believe that I can't even understand the newspaper. Can I really prepare for UPSC? Well, it's a mistaken assumption that you can do that, merely that you can start reading newspaper from the very first day. It will not work. Secondly, it is not a task which has to be done separately. In fact, you will see that it has to be done in sync with the general study subjects like polity, economy, history, geography, etc. And we'll discuss further on this just in a minute. Okay, but you avoid these myths so that you don't commit the mistakes which others do. Okay, so what is the practical tip number one is for you to integrate newspaper reading into your core GS preparation. And how do you do that? It's very easy to say that one of the first thing is to know your syllabus, know your general studies syllabus well. Needless to say, what I'm trying to say is just print the paper 1 to 4 syllabus, or even write it with your own hands, paper 1 to 4 GS syllabus, okay, and stick it on the wall on your study table or on the wall in front of you where you study, so that before reading the newspaper every day, first read the syllabus. Now, once you've read the syllabus, the next thing that you need to know, and you read the syllabus every day. I'm saying do this for a whole month, 2 months, read the syllabus every day. Okay, once you know the syllabus by heart, you can map alongside your GS syllabus your newspaper exercise, okay, or newspaper reading. What am I trying to say? When you see in your newspaper that there have been recently a number of articles about what? There have been recently a number of articles about GST and how GST compensation is being demanded by states, and that is related to the issue of federalism. If you have not read federalism from polity point of view, from Lakshmikant and from your class notes, there is no point of reading the GST debate currently. If you don't understand from your economy basic and from your polity basics as to what is GST, why is GST important for the states, you really can't understand the editorial coming in the newspaper. So the first thing for you to know is that when you pick up a newspaper and you come across a news article, you should be able to see which part of the syllabus does it apply to. There are many articles which will come in newspaper which do not apply to any part of your syllabus. Those articles you don't have to read, and we'll discuss this. I'll take up today's newspaper and we'll discuss that in a bit more detail after this. But for that, you see, whether that's federalism, for example, you see there have been the draft environment impact assessment notification and the debate around it. You know that environment comes in paper 3 of your syllabus. So I have to read this topic. The Prime Minister talked about menstrual hygiene on the 15th of August. So you know menstrual hygiene is a women health or women related issue that can come in paper 1 of your syllabus. Malnutrition. There have been editorials on malnutrition also recently in the past 1 month. And you know malnutrition is an issue related to poverty and hunger, and that comes in GS paper 2 of your syllabus. So when you go to the newspaper, before reading any article, first ask yourself which part of the syllabus does it apply to or cover or is related to. And that is the first tip, because it will help you ignore irrelevant information in the newspaper, something that will save your time and attention. So this is one first practical tip that in my opinion, you should keep in mind. Now moving on, the next thing that you need to ask yourself is how much, and students keep asking this, how much time should you devote for reading the newspaper? And the first thing for you to keep in mind is that don't devote more than 90 minutes to read the newspaper. 90 minutes to read the newspaper in the first 3 months of your preparation. In the first 3 months of your preparation, just spend 1.5 hours to read your newspaper. Okay, not more than that. And don't make newspaper notes during the first 3 months. Now this is extremely important. You can't finish your newspaper in the first 3 months in 1.5 hours if you start making notes. Don't make notes in the first 3 months of your preparation, because you will start writing each and everything which comes in the newspaper. It is useless. It is of no use. Before making newspaper notes, you must have read the basics of your polity, economy, history, and geography. It is only when you do that you will be able to make sense of the newspaper much better. No need to make notes. Then why are you reading newspaper in the first 3 months if you can't completely understand it? Because it will make you familiar. See, in the Indian education system, right from your birth to cracking your IITs and your IIMs and your mid-school exams or CATs or GREs or GMATs, newspaper reading has never been a part of the syllabus. You even are not familiar with reading newspapers. Some believe that reading Times of India is reading a newspaper, which, let me assure you, is not. Right? So you need to get familiar with the habit of picking up the newspaper and reading it. So it's just a habit forming activity in the first 3 months, making you familiar with the vocabulary, helping you improve your vocabulary also, and don't make notes. Okay? And only once, what do you do about note making from newspaper? I'll explain. But for the first 3 months, don't do this and just keep 1.5 hours. And which 1.5 hours? The least productive time of your day. Least productive time, meaning I am saying that in the evening, if you're doing the chai pe charcha, right, or the evening tea discussion with your friends, or you don't feel like doing anything else, then you read the newspaper. Say if you study from morning 5 p.m. onwards to 6:30, when you don't feel like doing anything, you can read the newspaper. Don't give the most productive time of your day to reading newspaper. Keep it on the least preference, especially in the first 3 months. However, things will start changing later. Okay, after the first 3 months of your preparation, you can change your strategy, and after that you can even look at making notes. So how do you do that? And how do you make notes out of newspaper? You know, one of the question and one of the common myths about making notes out of newspaper is that one must make daily notes from newspapers, or newspaper notes must be made day wise. No, that many students are like, okay, 1st September notes, 2nd September notes, you will start writing in your register. It is a bad strategy. If you're doing that already, stop it now. It is a waste of your time and your energy. Another myth is that while making newspaper notes, one must prepare notes separately for prelims examination and separately for mains examination. Both of them are big myths. Okay, don't make day-wise newspaper notes, and don't make separate notes for prelims and separate notes for mains examination. It's a bad strategy. Why am I saying so? Because ultimately you have to understand one thing. Notes making from newspapers is largely to be done from your mains examination point of view. For prelims examination related facts, etc., there is another strategy that I'll just tell you about just in a minute. Okay, so one of the things is that while you're making notes out of newspapers, start this after 3 months after you've done your polity, history, geography, economy. While making notes on the newspaper, firstly make 4 separate registers for GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3 and GS paper 4. Meaning paper 1 will be about your social issues, history, etc. GS paper 2 will be about polity, governance, international relations. GS paper 3 will be about what? Your economy, disaster management, environment, and GS paper 4 will be about ethics. Make 4 different copies according to your syllabus. Okay, and that is there you will make notes paper wise, so that 1 year after now or 1 month before the mains examination, you have your copies for paper 1. Okay, for paper 1 I have to revise this copy, okay, of your current affair related notes that you have made. So don't make it day wise, make it paper wise, and make 4 separate registers for your newspaper notes and make notes using the mains orientation in mind. And how do you do that? Let me just come to that aspect as to how do you go about making notes from newspaper using the mains or keeping the mains examination orientation. See, mains examination is about answer writing, right? And mains examination is about answer writing. So how do you do that? Make notes. See, it's a three-step process. You know, as I say that there's a three-step process. The first is to collect information. The first is to collect articles. The second is to read those articles, and third is to write a brief summary. It's a three-step process. One leads to the other, leads to the other. Meaning, collect at least 4 to 5 articles on one issue. So suppose you read 5 articles on GST right now, on fiscal federalism or something of that sort, or 5 articles on local government. Okay, so you read those, meaning that say on the 1st of September, one article comes on GST. The next article, first editorial comes on GST. On the 5th of September, another editorial comes on GST. On the 15th of September, another editorial comes on GST. Now you have collected these editorials, and or you read the editorial on 1st and collect it on the 5th, on the 15th. Now what you do is you read, you cut, and you keep them in 4 separate copies. But don't just keep them, otherwise they will pile up. What do you need to do is that once you have read 3 or 4 articles, while reading the article, you should see, while reading what? Article, editorials. While reading the editorials, you should see that the editorial that you have read, what is it explaining? Is it explaining the issue? Is it explaining the challenges in addressing the problem, or is it suggesting a way forward? So suppose you may read that editorial on GST explaining why is the current GST regime under stress. Another article may explain what are the current challenges it faces. Another article may suggest what is the way forward. For your mains examination answer writing, whether from your on any current affairs related question which comes, it has to be broadly divided into issues, challenges, and way forward. So while reading editorial, try to see whether it explains issues or the current challenges or the way forward. And more importantly, there can be many editorials which explain all the 3 of them. So it is in this context, just keep this in mind. And read, once you have read these articles, so once say you have read 5 articles on GST, now you make a 2 to 3 page summary on the issue. Okay, meaning a 2 to 3 page summary on the issue by dividing the whole issue into issues, challenges, and way forward, and also with some basic facts on the issue. Suppose you read on malnutrition, 4 or 5 articles, then you collect basic malnutrition facts, related facts, what is the prevalence of malnutrition in India, etc. And also that will be a part of the editorials. You don't need to mug them up separately. Bring them together so that you have 3 pages on malnutrition, 3 pages on GST and fiscal federalism. And so that when the question comes in the mains examination, you will be able to revise from one place and produce in the exam. This strategy is very essential to consolidate and bring the all information on one topic together. Merely reading articles is not enough. When do you start making notes? After the first 3 months, after you have done the basic reading. Don't make notes day-wise. In fact, collect 5 to 6 articles on one issue and then make notes. Okay, that is there. On IR or international relations related editorial, I always suggest students not to make notes especially and rely largely on class notes, because IR related editorials or international relations related topics are done much better with class notes by spending less time.